Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. In this video, I'm going to talk about credible threats. Credible threats are when the Federal Reserve uses their words to try and guide the markets in a particular direction. A lot of times they'll refer to it as jawboning or forward guidance, or now it's like signaling. I think that's what they refer to it as, is signaling. Anyway, all of it is pretty much a credible threat, meaning that they plan on doing something into the future. They put that statement out there. They have everybody convinced that that's what they are going to do. And then the markets behave in a fashion in which that they had already done that action. The Federal Reserve has already done that action. Even though they haven't done anything yet, the markets are behaving in a fashion as if they had. So now I have given examples of credible threats many times in the past, and right now I believe there is another credible threat that is beginning to emerge. Now, when we think about the Federal Reserve and what it is that they plan on doing with their monetary policy, I have been one to be of the belief that they are going to keep interest rates elevated for a significant amount of time. Far longer than what anybody had ever anticipated they would. And now this is because they are going for an average inflation rate over time. They don't go for a 2% target, what a lot of people believe. So as the inflation is coming down, it's not a signal to the Federal Reserve to adjust their monetary policies. A lot of people believe that's what the case is. That's not the case. So now when we look to the future and what it is that the Federal Reserve plans on doing, you can see that they are putting out there this idea that they have achieved a lot of what they are going for, but that they have not been successful at bringing inflation into where they want it to be. This is a very confusing idea because now nobody knows whether or not the Federal Reserve is going to lower interest rates, keep interest rates where they are. Hardly anybody believes that they're actually going to elevate interest rates, but yet statements coming from the Federal Reserve itself says they do have an idea about raising interest rates, and that the inflation fight is not over. Now, this is something that I said was going to take place a while ago, and it would be the reason that they would keep the interest rates elevated. Is that they have not finished the inflation fight because inflation is not over, because the real shortages have yet to come. And I also predicted, right, a long time ago, that the Federal Reserve would be blamed for causing undue damage, right, or unneeded damage to the economy by keeping the interest rates elevated when they should be lowering rates. And we are going to experience some of that narrative coming out here over the next probably year or more. Right. But the Federal Reserve is going to keep the interest rates elevated for a significant amount of time. Now, when we think about why it is that the Federal Reserve could possibly see inflation coming back and not coming down significantly or for a significant amount of time, is that when you have shortages in the system, the idea that there is going to be like price increases coming into the future is an inflation expectation that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you have shortages, people literally go out there and cause the prices to go up by either buying more than what they really want because they don't believe they're going to get it into the future, right? Or they pay an exorbitant amount for it because, again, they don't believe that they're going to get it into the future. So they actually cause an inflationary scenario to take place. And so when we have like an idea right now where the shift in manufacturing is taking place, if you take this idea into consideration, if there is a shift in manufacturing, there is a gap in production. Right? They're no longer producing here. They're going to shift it over to there. That gap in production leaves very little inventory to come to the market. And you can actually see this kind of taking place right now when you look at like trucking industries or, any kind of distribution, facilities. They're all suffering right now. I work in the distribution network myself. I do retail sales for a living within a lumber yard. I talk to many vendors out there, and one of the things that we get a lot of as far as phone calls is shipping brokers who are calling us looking to move material around. Now, during the pandemic, when there was a shortage of truckers, those guys did not call. We didn't hear one thing from them. But as the, issues with the trucking industry started to ramp up and they were looking for products to haul anywhere, these shipping brokers were calling us on a daily basis, and some of them were calling 3-4 times a day to different salesmen here at the store that I work at. So it says the signal to me that there was a shortage of products to ship around the country, and there was an overabundance of truckers. And this is what we're experiencing right now as you see a lot of these trucking companies going out of business. You know, this is something that we are going to experience going into the future. This is a recession in the making that nobody's going to quite understand is a recession because it was bailed out early. And that, again, was due to a credible threat. Now, the credible threat that bailed out this country in the beginning was due to special purpose vehicles. Special purpose vehicles were the entities that were separated from the Fed and the Treasury. These were used during the pandemic to bail out every corner of the financial market. One of them happened to be the corporate debt lending facility. This corporate debt lending facility was funded with hundreds of billions of dollars, and then the narrative was put out there that the Federal Reserve was going to be buying into corporate debt. This buying into corporate debt was going to be picking the winners and losers. Everybody within the economy started flipping out and saying, holy crap, look at the Federal Reserve. Look at what they're doing. They are going to be buying corporate debt. And the markets, they front run the Fed. They all started jumping into corporate debt, believing that if they were going to buy it, they would have somebody to sell it to, and that would be the Federal Reserve, because they had an entity set up, this special purpose vehicle, to be facilitated to buy hundreds of billions of dollars worth of of this corporate debt. You guys know what I was trying to say. But this is the credible threats that we are experiencing today. And that's just one of them. So today, when we think about it, you know, out of all the credible threats, you could probably think of more of them yourself as you look back. You can see, like, a lot of times, like, here's another one that the Federal Reserve did that was pretty good. They announced that they were going to be raising interest rates long ahead before they actually did it. The markets started behaving as if interest rates were rising or had been risen, but they hadn't yet. The Fed hadn't done anything yet, but yet the markets were already taking a position in which that interest rates were rising, and it started causing the rates to rise. A lot of people said that the Federal Reserve had lost control over the markets. Remember this narrative? It was big in the news for a while, and I said no, they didn't lose control. What they did is they put out the credible threat, and they got the markets to start behaving in a fashion in which that would be in accordance to what it is that the Federal Reserve was looking to do. That way, when the Fed did actually move, the markets really didn't react to it at all. The reaction had already taken place. So the Fed just basically stepped into raising interest rates. Now, what I find interesting about it is that the promise to continue to raise rates into the future caused mortgage rates to jump right away. When rates started to rise, especially in the mortgages, they shot up almost instantly. But then they plateaued out. And they do fluctuate, you know, a little bit. But for the most part, they have stayed elevated at a, you know, particular level, you know, somewhere between 7.5% to 8%, depending on where it is and, you know, what kind of loan you're going for. But this hasn't changed much. And yes, it does go up and down. There's fluctuations to it. But it doesn't work in lockstep with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve was raising interest rates over time. The mortgage rate shot up and stayed elevated and didn't really fluctuate as the Federal Reserve was raising rates. Does that kind of make sense? See, the credible threat alone that they were going to be raising rates going into the future and dumping mortgage-backed securities got the market to actually set the interest rate for them, right? It's not the Fed setting this interest rate. It's the market doing it. The market looks at those mortgage-backed securities and says, holy crap, that's the position. That's the point that I'm ready to buy in. And when they start buying in, that starts to establish where that interest rate is going to be. And that's what we're experiencing today. Yeah. Credible threat theory. It's a really good one. I'll talk more about this later. Uneducated Economist. You let me know.